Jericho, the first city on earth. Part 5 was Jericho truly the first? Tale of ancient rivals for thousands of years. Jericho has claimed a powerful title, the first city on earth. But is that true? Across the ancient Near East, other sites have risen from the sands of time. Places like Çatalhöyük, Göbekli Tepe, and Uruk, each with their own claim to greatness. Today we compare these ancient marvels and ask the question, was Jericho truly the first? Let's start with chronology. Jericho's earliest permanent settlement dates back to around 9600 BC, just after the last ice age ended. That makes it older than Çatalhöyük in Anatolia by over 2,000 years, and nearly 6,000 years older than Uruk in Sumer. Only Göbekli Tepe, in modern-day Turkey, rivals it in age, with monumental structures appearing as early as 9500 BC. So by the clock, Jericho is indeed among the first. But being first is about more than just age. To truly compare, we need to ask, what defines a city? Is it permanent housing? Large population? Organized religion? Trade networks? Social hierarchy? Let's examine the contenders. Jericho had permanent dwellings, a centralized water source, evidence of long-term planning, and even public architecture like the tower and stone wall, built around 8000 BCE. It also shows early signs of ritual behavior, such as the plastered skulls, and had long-distance trade in obsidian and shells. But Jericho's population likely numbered only in the hundreds. There's no evidence of writing, and no temples or palaces. It was revolutionary, but still very early in the urban experiment. It's just a few hundred kilometers north. Göbekli Tepe emerges at almost the same time. It boasts enormous stone circles, decorated with carvings of animals and abstract symbols, monumental religious architecture built before farming. Yet Göbekli Tepe wasn't a city. It had no houses, no permanent population, and no farms. It was likely a pilgrimage or ritual, said astonishing, but not urban. Now, fast forward to Çatalhöyük, around 7500 BC. This Anatolian settlement was a true dense urban cluster, with thousands of people living in closely packed homes, entered through the roof rather than the door. There were no streets, just a honeycomb of rooftops and courtyards. Inside homes were shrines, burials, and wall art. Trade flourished, tools improved. But there's a key difference. Çatalhöyük had no public buildings, no temples, no palaces, no central authority. It was a large community, but one without a formal hierarchy. Then comes Uruk, around 4000 BC, in southern Mesopotamia. We see the hallmarks of a true city, ziggurats rising from the earth, temples and palaces at the core, a complex bureaucracy. The invention of writing cuneiform was used to manage trade and taxes, canals, and defensive walls. A population in the tens of thousands, Uruk wasn't just a city. It was the blueprint for civilization. So, where does this leave Jericho? In terms of age, it is unmatched. In terms of urban complexity, it lags behind later cities like Uruk, but culturally, it represents something unique. A people settling down for the first time. A moment when humanity pivoted from survival to settlement, memory, and ritual. Jericho is not a city in the modern sense, but it is the seed, the first bold step into a new kind of life. Was Jericho the first city? Maybe not by today's standards, but it was the first place we could truly see ourselves, planting, building, remembering, and dreaming of permanence in a fleeting world. Jericho in the Bible, walls, war, and the search for truth, then fall. It is one of the most iconic scenes in all of Scripture. Trumpets blare, warriors shout, the walls of Jericho tremble. But what happened at Jericho during the time of Joshua? Was there a city here to conquer? Did the walls truly come crashing down? To answer these questions, we must shift forward in time, leaving behind Neolithic roundhouses and ancestral skulls, and entering the Bronze Age. By the early Bronze Age, Jericho was no longer a sleepy village. It had become a fortified urban center with ramparts, gates, and imposing walls. Archaeologists believe that around 2000 BCE, Jericho was a thriving Canaanite city, strategically placed, wealthy from trade, and guarded by massive stone defenses. It was one of many city-states dotting the Levant in this era, each ruled by its local king. March around the city once for 6 days. On the 7th day, blow the trumpets, ... the walls will collapse. This was the city that would have existed during the traditional period of the Exodus and conquest. It's commonly dated between 1400 to 1200 BC. The first major victory of the Israelites in the Promised Land. This is the Jericho of Joshua's story. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands." Joshua 6, the story is epic. Divine promise, ritual siege, a miraculous collapse. But is it history or is it a legend? In the 1930s, British archaeologist John Garstang believed he had found the answer. He uncovered a thick destruction, layer-collapsed mud brick, walls alongside charred wood, burnt grain, and a sudden end to city life. Garstang dated the destruction to around 1400 BC, matching the biblical timeline. It was hailed as stunning proof of the Bible's accuracy. But then came Kathleen Kenyon in the 1950s. Using modern methods, stratigraphy, and radiocarbon dating, she reached a very different conclusion. Kenyon dated Jericho's final Bronze Age destruction not to 1400 BC, but around 1550 BC, a full century too early for Joshua's conquest. She also found no signs of habitation during the 13th century BC, the time when many scholars now believe the conquest might have occurred. In other words, during the era of Joshua, Jericho was likely a ruin, abandoned. What then destroyed Jericho's great Bronze Age city? Most scholars today point to the Egyptian invasion of the region or internal collapse during the chaotic end of the Middle Bronze Age. Cities across Canaan were destroyed or abandoned around 1550 BCE, including Jericho among them. Afterward, it was resettled only briefly in the Iron Age and never returned to its former glory. So where does that leave the biblical story? Some scholars suggest that the story of Jericho may preserve a memory, a cultural echo of a real city's fall. Others see it as a theological narrative, not meant as literal history, but as symbolic truth. A story of faith, obedience, and divine intervention. And a few still hold to Garstang's early date, arguing that Kenyon's methods were too narrow, or that we simply haven't found the right layer yet. The truth is, Jericho has lived many lives. A village of roundhouses in the Neolithic. A trade hub fortified with walls. A Canaanite city in the Bronze Age. A ruin at the feet of empires. A symbol retold across millennia. It may not be the city Joshua brought down with trumpets, but it was a city whose walls did fall again, and again under the weight of war, time, and memory. In the end, perhaps the real miracle of Jericho, ... was not that its walls fell once, but that it stood so long and still stands today. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.